The bar on the outskirts of Rallos 5's bustling trade district was the last place anyone expected to find Professor Elias Grant. Wearing a weathered jacket with frayed hems, the middle-aged xenobiologist sipped a drink fizzing ominously in a chipped glass, his eyes flitting between the datapad on the table and the chaotic chatter around him. Around him, patrons of every conceivable species chattered in their guttural, musical, or altogether alien tongues, oblivious to the storm brewing in his mind. It wasn't the loud cacophony or the pungent aroma of intergalactic cuisine that troubled him. It was the datapad on the table displaying a series of findings that, if correct, could upend the galaxy as they knew it. The realization had struck him earlier that morning while poring over blood samples from a Terran research facility, the faint hum of lab equipment underscoring the weight of his discovery. The crimson droplets on his slide seemed almost alive, their regenerative properties defying everything he understood about biology. Each scan and test result had sharpened the truth until it was undeniable and terrifying. Grant felt a cold dread settle over him, the kind that gnawed at the edges of his rationality. His chest tightened, and his hands trembled as the magnitude of the discovery loomed larger with every passing moment. The samples had been flagged for exhibiting anomalous regenerative properties. At first, Grant assumed it was a mistake, a data entry error from some overworked intern. But as he dug deeper, the truth emerged. Human blood contained a unique protein that could regenerate organic tissue across species, a substance so potent it defied conventional science. To any species suffering from terminal illness, catastrophic injury, or genetic degradation, it represented a breakthrough so profound it could rewrite the boundaries of interstellar medicine. Grant's throat tightened as he glanced around the room. The weight of his discovery felt like 1,000 suns bearing down on his chest. He knew what this meant. If word got out, humans would no longer be viewed as the scrappy newcomers to interstellar society. They'd become prey. Harvested. Hunted. Reduced to nothing more than a biological resource to be drained dry. "Professor, you look like you've seen a ghost," came a familiar voice. He glanced up to see Mara, his research assistant, sliding into the seat across from him. Her fiery red hair and sharp green eyes had always been an odd juxtaposition against her otherwise calm demeanor, but now her expression mirrored his dread. "It's worse than that," Grant muttered, pushing the datapad toward her. "Read it." Mara scanned the screen, her eyes widening with every line. "This can't be real," she whispered. "Do you know what this means?" "I do," Grant said gravely. "And we need to figure out how to keep it from everyone else." The conversation was interrupted by a low hum as the bar's holographic screen flared to life. A news broadcast flickered into view, and the words on the ticker sent a chill down Grant's spine. "Breaking. Unconfirmed reports of human blood's healing properties spark galactic interest." Mara's gaze snapped to his. "It's already out." Before he could respond, the bar's atmosphere shifted. Conversations hushed, and alien patrons turned toward Grant and Mara. Some regarded them with wide, curious eyes, their expressions a mixture of intrigue and caution. Others bore looks of unrestrained greed, their gazes narrowing as if calculating the worth of the humans before them. A few shifted in their seats, their bodies tensing, and low murmurs rippled through the crowd like an electric current, amplifying the sense of imminent danger. The atmosphere thickened with a palpable menace, every alien tongue silenced as tension crackled in the air. Grant's pulse quickened as he realized they were no longer unnoticed figures in the crowd. They were targets. "We need to leave," he said, grabbing the datapad and shoving it into his bag. "Now." Mara didn't argue. Together, they slipped out of the bar, but the crowded streets of Rallos 5 offered little reprieve. News of the discovery spread like wildfire. Giant holographic billboards displayed the breaking news in multiple languages, and the whispers that followed them carried an unsettling undertone. Humans were no longer just intergalactic citizens. They were commodities. As they ducked into an alleyway, a shadow loomed overhead. A massive Crothian, an 8-foot-tall reptilian alien with scales that shimmered like oil, blocked their path. Its yellow eyes narrowed, and its voice was a guttural snarl. "Humans," it said, its forked tongue flicking. "Your blood? It's true, isn't it?" "We don't know what you're talking about," Grant replied, trying to sidestep the creature, but it grabbed his arm with a clawed hand. "You do," the Crothian hissed. "And you will come with me." Before it could drag him away, Mara reacted with surprising swiftness. Her hand darted into her pocket, fingers brushing against the cool metal of a compact device. In one fluid motion, she hurled it at the Crothian's feet. The device detonated with a blinding flash and an ear-splitting crack, the acrid smell of burning ozone filling the air. The Crothian recoiled, its yellow eyes squeezing shut as it hissed in pain and confusion. Around them, a few passers-by stumbled back, shielding their faces from the searing light. Grant staggered, his ears ringing, but Mara grabbed his arm, her grip firm, pulling him toward the nearest alley as chaos erupted behind them. It exploded in a flash of light and sound, disorienting the alien long enough for them to escape. "Where did you get that?" Grant asked as they ran through the maze of alleys. "College wasn't all labs and libraries," Mara said, smirking despite the danger. "We need to find a ship. Somewhere remote where we can figure this out." Grant nodded. The urgency in her voice mirrored his own thoughts. But as they emerged from the alley onto a bustling docking bay, it became clear that escaping wouldn't be easy. Security forces and bounty hunters, of every species imaginable, patrolled the area, their eyes scanning for potential prey. "They're looking for humans," Mara whispered, pulling her hood up. "We need disguises." Grant scanned their surroundings, spotting a vendor selling cloaks and masks. They quickly bought 2 nondescript outfits, blending into the crowd as best they could. Their destination was a small freighter at the edge of the docking bay. Its captain, a grizzled old Volokian with a cybernetic arm, was known for asking few questions and demanding fewer answers. "We need passage," Grant said, his voice low but firm. "No questions. Just take us as far as your ship can go." The Volokian studied them for a moment before nodding. "Credits?" Grant handed over a handful of precious Terran credits, and the Volokian gestured for them to board. As they climbed the ramp, Grant felt a momentary pang of relief. They'd escaped for now. The ship's interior was a claustrophobic maze of dim lights casting uneven shadows on walls patched together with mismatched panels and frayed wiring. The faint hum of the engines reverberated through the tight corridors, while the recycled air carried a metallic tang and a slight chill, amplifying the uneasy atmosphere. The faint hum of the engines underscored the ship's age, and the metallic tang of recycled air hung heavy, adding to the oppressive atmosphere. Mara slumped into a seat, exhaling sharply. "Do you think we'll make it?" "I don't know," Grant admitted. "But we have to try." The freighter's engines roared to life, and the ship lifted off, leaving the chaos of Rallos 5 behind. But as they ascended into the stars, Grant couldn't shake the feeling that their troubles were only beginning. The galaxy's voracious appetite for power and resources was a predator that wouldn't rest, and their secret was a prize too tempting to ignore. Shadowy syndicates, desperate governments, and opportunistic bounty hunters would all be drawn to the lure of humanity's hidden gift, turning every corner of the cosmos into a potential trap. The galaxy was vast, but news traveled fast. And if even a fraction of the beings they'd seen were as desperate as that Crothian, humanity's days as free citizens were numbered. As the freighter slipped into hyperspace, Grant turned to Mara. "We need to figure out how to protect this secret. If the galaxy learns the full truth, humans won't just be hunted, we'll be farmed." Mara's eyes hardened. "Then we'll make sure that doesn't happen. No matter what it takes." Grant nodded, his determination renewed. They had a long road ahead, but for the sake of their species, they would find a way to navigate it. Together. The stars outside the freighter's viewport stretched into glowing streaks as the ship slipped into hyperspace. Inside, the deceptive calm carried a heavy stillness, as though the universe was bracing for an inevitable upheaval. Grant stared out at the swirling colors of space, his mind racing with half-formed plans and lingering doubts. The subtle vibration of the ship's engines hummed through his boots, grounding him to the present. He could feel the weight of the datapad in his bag, its smooth edges pressing against his side, a stark reminder of humanity's new and precarious place in the galaxy. The revelation wasn't just science, it was a death sentence for their species if mishandled. Mara's voice broke the silence. "We need a plan." "I'm aware," Grant replied, turning to face her. She sat cross-legged on a small bench, her arms resting on her knees. Despite the exhaustion etched on her face, her green eyes burned with determination. "Running can't be the whole strategy," she continued. "Sooner or later they'll find us. We need to go on the offensive, figure out how to control the narrative about what human blood can and can't do." Grant frowned. "You're suggesting we release more information?" Mara shook her head. "No. I'm saying we figure out how to contain what's already out there. Right now we're just a rumor. If we let it grow, we'll never put the genie back in the bottle." Before Grant could respond, the ship's comm system crackled to life. The voice of the Volokian captain, low and gruff, echoed through the small cabin. "We've got company. Long-range sensors picked up a ship tailing us. Doesn't look friendly." Mara shot to her feet. "How long until they catch up?" "Not long," the captain replied. If they've got a tracker on us, we're sitting ducks the moment we drop out of hyperspace. Grant felt a chill run down his spine. Can't we jump again immediately? The captain barked a humorless laugh. This is a freighter, Professor, not a military vessel. The hyperdrive needs time to recharge, and we don't have the firepower to outrun or outgun a determined pursuer. Options? Mara asked, her tone sharp. The comm crackled. There's an asteroid field about half a parsec from our drop point. We can try to lose them in the debris, but it'll be risky. They'll have to slow down to follow us, but so will we. Do it, Mara said without hesitation. She turned to Grant. Better to gamble on maneuvering than sit here waiting to get caught. Grant nodded, though his stomach churned. He had no better ideas. The freighter jolted as the captain adjusted their course, a faint vibration coursing through the hull. Outside, the hypnotic streaks of hyperspace began to shift into chaotic patterns, signaling their rapid deceleration toward the destination. With a jarring lurch, they exited hyperspace into a region of space dominated by massive, irregular chunks of rock. The asteroid field stretched out like a minefield, each fragment illuminated by the distant glow of a dying star. Hold on, the captain's voice warned. The freighter banked sharply, diving into the field. Grant gripped a nearby railing as the ship jolted, its shields absorbing the occasional impact from smaller debris. Mara stood beside him, her expression tense but focused. There they are, she said, pointing to the viewport. A sleek, dark ship emerged from hyperspace behind them, its design predatory and unmistakably designed for pursuit. Its weapons glowed faintly, ready to fire. The freighter's engines roared as the Volokian pilot pushed the ship to its limits, weaving through the dense field. The pursuing ship followed, its movements smoother and more precise. Bright beams of energy lanced through the vacuum, narrowly missing the freighter as the asteroids provided intermittent cover. They're closing in? Mara shouted. Grant's mind raced. He wasn't a soldier or a strategist, but the sheer weight of responsibility pressed down on him, demanding answers. Every scenario that flashed through his mind felt inadequate or impossibly risky, each one unraveling as quickly as it formed, yet he knew doing nothing wasn't an option. Desperation clawed at his thoughts, forcing him to focus on possibilities he would have dismissed in calmer times. His eyes darted around the cabin until they landed on a console displaying the ship's shield status. What if we overload the shields? He asked, his voice faltering for a moment. The weight of suggesting such a desperate move tightened his throat. Release the energy in a burst. It might disrupt their systems long enough for us to escape. His mind raced with doubts. What if it failed or worse left them completely defenseless? But there was no time to second-guess. Mara frowned. That's a big risk. We could fry our own systems. Do you have a better idea? Grant retorted, his tone edged with a mix of desperation and defiance. She hesitated, then nodded. Captain, can we redirect shield power for an energy burst? The Volokian grunted. We can try, but you'd better hope it works. If it doesn't, we're dead in the water. Do it, Mara ordered. Grant moved to the console, his hands trembling as he navigated the unfamiliar controls. The screen flickered erratically, its alien symbols glowing faintly in hues of green and orange. The console emitted a low hum, punctuated by sharp rhythmic beeps as Grant's fingers hesitated over the controls. With Mara's guidance, he rerouted the ship's power, feeling the slight vibration intensify under his fingertips as the shield array absorbed the redirected energy. The freighter shuddered as the system strained under the load. Now? Mara shouted. Grant activated the burst. For a split second, the entire ship was bathed in blinding light as the shield energy discharged in all directions. The pursuing ship, caught mid-maneuver, wobbled violently, its lights dimming in a stuttering cascade as its systems flickered uncontrollably. Its weapons powered down, and it veered into a large asteroid, the impact sending debris scattering. It worked, Mara exclaimed, her relief palpable. With a triumphant roar, the freighter's engines surged back to life, propelling them out of the asteroid field as fragments of shattered rock drifted in their wake. Grant slumped against the wall, his heart pounding. They'd bought themselves time, but he knew it wouldn't last. We can't keep running like this, he said, his voice edged with frustration. We need allies, people who can help us protect humanity before it's too late. Mara nodded. I know just the place. There's a Terran enclave on the edge of Vrenna space. They're small but they're loyal. If anyone can help us figure this out, it's them. Grant hesitated. If we go there, we're putting them at risk. They'd do the same for us, Mara replied. And right now we don't have many options. Grant sighed, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. Fine. Set the course. The freighter's engines thrummed steadily, the comforting rhythm marking their new course through the vast expanse of space. Mara turned to Grant, her expression softening. "We'll figure this out," she said. "We always do." Grant managed a faint smile. "Let's hope you're right." As the freighter slipped back into hyperspace, the swirling colors outside the viewport seemed less foreboding and more hopeful. But deep down, Grant knew the fight was far from over. The galaxy had already set its sights on humanity, and the real battle was just beginning. The swirling colors of hyperspace dissolved as the freighter emerged into normal space, revealing the distant glow of the Terran Enclave perched at the edge of Vrena territory. The Enclave's planet, Caltris 4, hung like a sapphire jewel against the inky blackness of space, its shimmering cities casting faint glows that rivaled the natural green patches of its lush terrain. It was a haven for humans, a remote outpost that had escaped much of the galactic turmoil. Grant leaned forward, his face pale but resolute. "It's beautiful," he murmured, the weight of their mission pressing heavily on him. For a brief moment, the sight reminded him of Earth, its blue oceans and green landscapes a fragile sanctuary that humanity had always fought to preserve. But this wasn't Earth, and the stakes here were infinitely higher. "Let's hope it's safe," Mara replied, her eyes scanning the horizon. The freighter's sensors emitted a low ping indicating no immediate threats. Still, she kept her hand close to her weapon. The Velokian pilot's voice crackled over the comms. "This is where you get off. The less I'm involved, the better. Good luck." "Thanks for everything," Grant replied, his gratitude genuine. The freighter slowed as it approached one of the Enclave's orbital stations, a sprawling structure that gleamed under the light of a nearby star. The docking procedure was uneventful, and soon Grant and Mara stepped onto the station's platform, their boots clanging against polished metal. The station's interior buzzed with life. Scientists in lab coats conferred in hushed tones, traders navigated the corridors with brisk determination, and mercenaries scanned their surroundings with practiced vigilance, each step purposeful in the bustling hub. The air hummed with energy, and for the first time in days, Grant felt a flicker of hope. "This way," Mara said, taking the lead. She navigated the bustling corridors with ease, eventually stopping in front of a reinforced door marked with the Terran Alliance emblem. She pressed a button, and a soft chime echoed before the door slid open. Inside, a tall man with graying hair and a commanding presence stood waiting. His piercing blue eyes locked onto Grant and Mara as they entered. "I was wondering when you'd show up," he said, his tone clipped but not unkind. "Commander Reeves," Mara said, inclining her head. "We need your help." Reeves gestured for them to sit. The room was sparse, with a central table surrounded by a few chairs. A holographic projector stood in the middle, its blue light casting faint shadows on the walls. Once they were seated, Reeves leaned forward, his expression grave. "What's going on?" Grant took a deep breath and began explaining. He described the discovery, the implications of human blood's unique properties, and the threats they'd faced since the news had leaked. Reeves listened intently, his jaw tightening as the story unfolded. "So you're telling me," Reeves said slowly, his tone heavy with both disbelief and resolve, "that humanity has just become the galaxy's most sought-after commodity?" He leaned back in his chair, his fingers tapping rhythmically on the table as his mind raced. "This changes everything: supply routes, defenses, alliances. The entire balance of power could tip. If they find out about this, it won't just be bounty hunters. Whole fleets could descend on us overnight." "Yes," Grant replied. "And if we don't control this, we'll be hunted, harvested, and eradicated." Reeves nodded, his expression hardening. "We need to act fast. The Enclave has resources, but if the Vrena or any other factions catch wind of this, they'll come for us." Mara leaned forward. "We need a secure location to analyze the data and figure out how to contain the spread of information. Somewhere off-grid." Reeves' eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "There's an old research facility in the Enclave's northern sector. It's been decommissioned for years, but it's still operational. We can set up there, but you'll need to move fast. I'll arrange transport and assign a few trusted personnel to help you." "Thank you," Grant said. "We'll do everything we can to protect humanity." Reeves stood, his demeanor unyielding. "Let's hope it's enough." Hours later, Grant, Mara, and a small team arrived at the northern facility. The building was nestled in a dense forest, its angular structure partially concealed by towering trees and thick foliage. A transport shuttle hovered above the clearing, its engines humming softly as it descended. The facility's exterior, with its reinforced walls weathered by time and streaked with moss, bore the marks of both abandonment and resilience. The faint smell of damp earth mixed with the metallic tang of rust, and the soft hum of distant wildlife underscored the isolation of the site. "Looks secure enough," Mara said as they approached the main entrance. She tapped on a control panel, and after a brief pause the heavy doors groaned open, revealing a dimly lit interior. The team moved quickly, activating power systems and setting up equipment. The facility's main control room came to life with the glow of holographic displays and monitors, casting eerie light across the otherwise dark space. Grant immediately began analyzing the data on his data pad, cross-referencing it with the Enclave's medical records. Mara stood guard near the entrance, her weapon at the ready. "How long do you think we have before someone finds us?" Grant didn't look up. "Not long. If they've been tracking us, they'll find this location eventually. We need to work fast." As the team worked, the tension in the air grew palpable. Hours passed, and the hum of activity filled the facility. Grant's research unearthed startling details about the properties of human blood. The regenerative protein, already extraordinary, proved far more potent than his initial estimates. It had the potential to cure diseases, regenerate lost limbs, and even reverse aging in some species. But it also posed risks. The potential for misuse was staggering. "This isn't just about protecting humanity," Grant said, his voice heavy with realization. His mind churned through the implications, each more catastrophic than the last. Imagine every faction, every empire, scrambling to take control of this. Alliances would crumble, wars would erupt, and the entire galaxy could descend into chaos, all for a drop of our blood. Every major power will fight for control of this. Mara's expression darkened. "Then we can't let it get out." "What's the plan?" Grant hesitated. "We need to create a false trail. Something to mislead anyone looking for us or this data. If we make it seem like the information was exaggerated or even falsified, it might buy us time." Reeves' voice came through the comms. "We've got a problem." Long-range sensors picked up multiple ships entering the system. "They're not Enclave-friendly." Mara's jaw tightened. "How long do we have?" "A few hours, maybe less. They're heading straight for us." Grant's mind raced. "We need to destroy the data. If they get their hands on it, everything we've worked for will be for nothing." Reeves replied, "Understood. I'll send reinforcements, but they might not arrive in time. You're on your own until then." The team sprang into action. Grant began purging the facility's systems, encrypting critical files and initiating a data wipe. Mara and the others fortified the entrance, setting up barricades and preparing for the inevitable confrontation. As the first hostile ships pierced the planet's atmosphere, the facility's alarms erupted in a piercing wail, echoing through the metal corridors and sending a jolt through the team. The team braced themselves, weapons raised, as the crunch of boots on fallen leaves and the faint hum of enemy equipment grew louder, closing in through the dense forest. "They're here," Mara said, her voice steady despite the tension. Grant took one last look at the glowing monitors before turning to face the entrance. "No matter what happens," he said, "we can't let them win." The facility fell silent, the calm before the storm. Then, with a deafening crash, the reinforced doors burst inward, showering sparks and debris as the invaders stormed through, igniting the battle for humanity's survival. The first blast rocked the facility, sending shockwaves through the reinforced walls. A searing heat rippled through the air, followed by an ear-splitting roar that rattled every surface. Grant stumbled, clutching the edge of a console for support as the acrid scent of burning metal and circuitry filled his lungs. The monitors in the control room flickered, casting erratic shadows across the dimly lit space. Outside, the air filled with the hum of alien weapons and the shouts of advancing soldiers. "They're pushing hard." Mara yelled over the chaos, her voice sharp and commanding, cutting through the cacophony like a blade. She shifted with practiced precision, firing her weapon in calculated bursts while shouting quick, decisive orders to the Enclave soldiers. Her unshakable presence was a beacon amid the chaos, galvanizing the team to hold their ground. She fired her weapon in controlled bursts, the muzzle flashes illuminating her determined expression. Beside her, two Enclave soldiers braced behind makeshift barricades, returning fire with grim precision. Grant's fingers flew across the console. The data purge was nearly complete, but the progress bar moved agonizingly slow. "Just a little longer," he muttered under his breath, the sweat on his brow trickling down his temple. He glanced at the encrypted files one last time before initiating a final override. If they fell into the wrong hands, it would mean catastrophe. The doors leading to the control room shuddered as the enemy advanced. The barricades at the entrance held, but only barely. Sparks flew as plasma bolts struck the walls, leaving scorched marks and filling the air with acrid smoke. "Grant, we're running out of time." Mara's voice was sharp with urgency. "Almost there," he shouted back, his voice cracking from the strain. He slammed a hand on the console, triggering the final wipe sequence. The screen flashed red and a confirmation appeared: all data purged. Relief washed over him, but it was short-lived. A deafening explosion ripped through the barricades, shaking the entire room and sending shards of debris flying. Smoke billowed from the wreckage as hulking insectoid aliens surged forward, their serrated limbs cutting through the haze with a chilling efficiency. Their guttural, menacing hisses blended with the sharp clicks of their mandibles, a symphony of predatory intent. The first invader, a hulking insectoid alien clad in gleaming armor, lunged into the room, its weapon glowing ominously. Mara pivoted, dropping it with a precise shot, but more followed. "Fall back," she commanded, her voice unwavering. The team retreated toward the rear exit, firing as they moved. Grant clutched the datapad tightly, its blank screen a reminder of what they'd sacrificed to protect. The escape route led them into a narrow corridor illuminated by flickering emergency lights. The sound of pursuit was relentless, the heavy thud of boots and alien chittering echoing off the walls. Mara led the way, her weapon raised, while Grant struggled to keep up, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "We're not going to make it at this rate," one of the Enclave soldiers said, his voice grim. Mara shot him a glare. "We don't have a choice. Keep moving." The corridor opened into a loading bay where a small shuttle waited, its engines idling. Reeves' voice crackled over their comms. "Shuttle's prepped, but you've got company closing fast. Get on board now." Grant stumbled up the ramp, collapsing into one of the shuttle's seats as the others piled in behind him. Mara was the last to board, covering their retreat with a final volley of fire before slamming the hatch shut. "Go," she barked. The shuttle lifted off, its engines roaring as it ascended. Plasma bolts streaked past the viewport, narrowly missing their mark. Grant watched as the facility grew smaller below them, the surrounding forest engulfed in flames from the relentless assault. The enemy forces swarmed like ants, their numbers overwhelming. "What now?" Grant asked, his voice shaky. "We destroyed the data, but they won't stop." Mara sat across from him, her expression hard. "We destroyed the data, but we still have what they want." She tapped her temple. "You know the science, Grant. You're the key." The weight of her words sank in, a crushing reminder of the burden he now carried. The data might be gone, but the knowledge, vivid and unrelenting, was still etched into his mind. Every solution, every breakthrough he had uncovered was now a target painted on him, and the enormity of safeguarding humanity's future bore down on him like a relentless tide. He couldn't decide if the knowledge was a gift or a curse. As long as he lived, humanity's secret wasn't safe. Reeves' voice came over the comms again. "I've arranged a rendezvous with a stealth cruiser. It'll take you off-planet and deep into uncharted space. We'll scatter and draw their attention away from you." Grant's chest tightened. "But what about the Enclave? They'll come after you." "Let them," Reeves replied, his tone resolute. "We've defended this place before and we'll do it again. Your job is to survive. If they get to you, it's over." His gaze lingered on the shuttle's viewport, where the chaos outside painted a grim backdrop. He knew the cost of his decision, but the survival of humanity was worth any sacrifice. For him, staying behind wasn't just a duty, it was a promise to hold the line no matter the odds. The shuttle broke through the atmosphere, the black expanse of space swallowing the fiery chaos below. Grant stared out of the viewport, his heart heavy with guilt and determination. The Enclave had sacrificed so much for him, and now the weight of their trust bore down on him like a physical force. His fingers brushed the edge of the datapad, a small yet profound reminder of Earth's legacy and humanity's fragile hope. "We're approaching the cruiser," the pilot announced. Ahead, a sleek, black ship emerged from the shadows of an asteroid field, its design almost invisible against the starry backdrop. The shuttle docked with a soft clunk, and the team disembarked into the dimly lit interior. An officer greeted them, her sharp features and crisp uniform radiating authority. "Welcome aboard. You'll be safe here for now." Grant followed Mara and the others into the ship's interior, his mind racing. Safe was a relative term. The galaxy was vast, but news traveled fast. No matter how far they ran, the danger would follow. As the cruiser slipped into hyperspace, Grant sat in the quiet of his assigned quarters. The datapad, now wiped clean, sat on the desk in front of him. He traced its edge with his finger, the enormity of their situation weighing heavily on him. Humanity had always been resilient, but this was different. The galaxy saw them as prey now, a resource to be exploited. Mara entered, her presence grounding him. Her gaze was steady, yet there was a flicker of weariness in her eyes. "We'll figure this out," she said softly, her voice a quiet but resolute anchor. "One step at a time." Grant nodded, her words a small comfort in the face of the overwhelming odds. "They won't stop," he said. "Not until they get what they want." "Then we won't stop either," Mara replied, her voice steady. "Humanity has faced extinction before, wars, plagues, even the collapse of entire civilizations. Every time we found a way to rise again. This won't be any different." For the first time in hours, Grant allowed himself a faint smile. Mara was right. They'd faced impossible odds before and they'd do it again. This wasn't just about survival. It was about defiance, about proving that humanity was more than a commodity to be consumed. They were a species of innovation and resilience, and Grant intended to show the galaxy exactly what that meant. As the cruiser sped through the void, Grant's resolve hardened. The fight wasn't over, it was just beginning. He envisioned a path forward, gathering allies, spreading misinformation to mislead their enemies, and finding a way to turn the galaxy's greed against itself. The burden was immense, but the survival of humanity depended on his next steps. He would not fail them.